Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, and today's guest, in order to get ready for our interview, he actually woke up and went and ran almost 7 miles from what I saw on his Instagram. And, I also love running. I was out there with the weighted vest yesterday, and, a lot of people run for different reasons. Today's guest is an athlete, a veteran, and he went on a weight loss journey, and now he helps other people do the same. He is the host of the Rise Again from the Struggle podcast. And like I mentioned, he posts on Instagram pieces of advice, great information, daily reflections, and you can connect with him there. And so, Mr. Kevin Brewer, great to have you here. And could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I was a small town guy, grew up and I went to the Navy. After the Navy, got out, did the government contracting thing, and now I'm a government employee, at least for now. Kind of in flux or potentially getting cut, but who knows? Congress seems to want to keep us, and DOJ doesn't have an idea, so it's a little strange right now. But anyway, I also do kind of the coaching on the side to help other people kind of understand what's going on with their life and their habits and how it can help them lose weight and just get their life back in order.
For sure. So you said you were in the Navy. What exactly was your job in the Navy?
I was a CTT was my rate, what they call it, so electronic technician technical. So basically, it was non-communication based signals, or yeah, I guess that's how I spell it, radar effectively. We collected and evaluated radar signals.
Alrighty, and how long were you in for?
Just shy of 7 years, so like I think it was May, and then my 2 year or 7 year mark would have been July, but
Yeah, so you were approaching that halfway mark, that 10-year point. Did you get out by choice? Was it medical, or what went into it with you being close to that halfway point?
a little bit of all the above. So I had a Navy or chief, my first command, that told me the reason he was still in the Navy is because he always kind of had the upper hand to a certain extent. So he always re-enlisted for orders. When I got back from Afghanistan, I was supposed to be on shore duty in the DC area, and they sent me to Afghanistan. So when I came back, we are supposed to re-up and let me stay here for another year to make up for that time. And my paper got screwed up. I didn't know it. I mean, you trust admin, and they extended my tour. So the length of time I was supposed to be at the command was extended, but they didn't extend my enlistment, which is I thought they had, but they did not. So when it came down to the end of my contract, it was kind of like a quick thing of like, hey, your contract's ending, or like I was like, what are you talking about? But then I had too much time left at my command, so the Navy kind of had the real upper hand on me. And I was like, yeah, it's time to get out. Around that time too, I was having a lot of my medical issues really set in too. So I don't know that I've been able to even pass a reenlistment physical, to be honest. So yeah, so it's kind of just time to get out at that point. Like the Navy had the upper hand. I was having some medical issues, and it just wasn't a really good time to stay in.
Right. That's something that's always blown my mind while I was in the Navy and working with veterans. I've come across a lot of similar stories and experiences about paperwork being lost, paperwork being delayed drastically. And I understand the larger an organization gets, unfortunately, sometimes the less efficient it can get in those types of circumstances. But we always think, like military precision. It's interesting how technical side, you're on top of everything, but when it comes to the personnel and the paperwork, and I had a great episode recently with, a submarine leader, and what we talked about was that those kinds of positions are so crucial for morale and retention. If admin and personnel and all these customer service like jobs are not on top of what they're supposed to do, and they are wasting people's time, everything gets delayed and set back, and then everyone's morale goes down, especially if they have to stay and work late or things were delayed. And then in the worst case scenarios, like your situation, can actually cost people their retention, their reenlistment, their bonuses, right? We've seen people's bonuses get screwed over with paperwork. I mean, talk about a heartbreak, right? So that definitely happens. So you got out, and how was your transition getting out, especially having been in Afghanistan? Did you struggle with your identity with settling back into the civilian world with starting a new life? Was there unresolved trauma for the military, or did you have a pretty smooth transition?
That was not smooth. Like I said, I was planning on getting out a year after I actually got out. So it was very quick and sudden. I was actually in the process of going to Denver for a project for the admiral at the time that I was working for. And that's when I found out. So I was actually in Denver, based out of DC, but I was in Denver doing like I said, it's going to be a long-term TDY. And then they said, "Hey, we're gonna have to do re-enlistment." I was like, "Nah, I'm not re-enlisting because then you're gonna you'll basically have the upper hand. You'll never be able to do anything for me, and I'm gonna get screwed over. So I'm not gonna do it." So I ended up coming back to DC a couple months later, got out. So I had no real plans because I didn't have time to plan anything. I was like I said, it was pretty relatively sudden because I thought my paperwork was good and it wasn't. So thankfully, I was able to kind of go back to Illinois, stay with my mother-in-law for a little while because my father-in-law had passed away a couple years before that, so she was just there by herself anyway. So we went back there for a little bit, kind of got our feet under us again, figured out what's going on, and I was able to just kind of start applying for jobs really. So I just started went to a bunch of career fairs and things like that. And so yeah, it was a tough time too, 2009. So the economy wasn't great. The government was was downsizing a little bit. So government jobs or contract jobs in the intel community were few and far between. There wasn't a bunch out there. So it was tough, for a couple months. It took me, I think, 6 months.
Right. And I know on a lot of your social media platforms, you have lost 90 pounds in 15 months. At what point was your weight an issue? Did you develop weight gain while in the military, or was it during this civilian transition that the weight kind of came on?
A little bit of both. Towards the end of well, after I got back from Afghanistan, I had a lot of health things come up and I didn't know what it was. And it went undiagnosed for 13 years before I figured it out. And it started after I got back from Afghanistan. And because of that, I couldn't do anything physical. So I was basically, I could go to and from work and that was about it. So I started doing anything like running or anything like lifting weights or stuff like that, like really just using my body. It would just start going into like a panic mode and have all these pains in my chest and my back and my neck and everything. So and they just couldn't figure it out, but it caused a lot of anxiety, a lot of all these, kind of mental things come up. I see obviously a lot of physical pain, neurologic pain, a little bit of everything. So I started to gain weight at that point because I lived my entire life as basically, being athletic and being in the military and everything. So I didn't have an understanding of my eating patterns and all that stuff. So I gained a ton of weight and I just kept gaining weight, gaining weight, gaining weight. And then as I was gaining weight, I was also getting less and less healthy for multiple reasons because, I was born with psoriasis, the psoriasis turned into psoriatic arthritis. I had GERD, I had, all the whatever was going on that they didn't understand. So a little bit of everything that's kind of going on. And it's all just kept compounding, compounding, compounding. And then my nervous system basically started shutting down and they couldn't figure out what was going on. I started getting, treated for rheumatology. They thinking that was that. And it just never really helped. So I really just was like, you know what? I'm about to go up in pant size again. I was at like 48. I was about to buy size 50. And I was like 240 plus pounds. And I was like, first off, I just feel so uncomfortable in my own skin. I can't really work out. So I was, around this time, I started looking into this mental performance stuff. And, I just kind of like asked God for help and, to save me or whatever. And I just said, he saved me. And I said, all right, let me start figuring this out. So I started using mental performance stuff. And I said, all right, let me get my habits under control. Let me take away one of the excuses from the doctors about my weight. So I started going, all right, let me get that under control. So I started that process. I also knew that it needed to be permanent, so I couldn't just do some random diet. So I actually had to fully understand what was going on, how to control my eating, control what went in my mouth, how to eat, all that stuff. So I just started using my habits first. So I started with just portion control, and then started, I lost I think like 30 pounds that way. And I did intermittent fasting, and then I started doing just trying to get rid of sugar. So I really just started that was like a place I was working at the time. Had cake, cookies, donuts, candy everywhere all the time. Like literally every day, there was tons of stuff. and we would grab it all the time. So I was just like, all right, one time a day, I'm just going to walk by and say no. Or, every
Mm.
time when I want to, I'll just say no one time a day. And then after that, it just started going and just compounding it. All right, one time turned into two times, turned into a whole day, turned into, a couple times a week, turned into only on Fridays. And then, started that process. And then I started going into some of the other stuff like, was it the plant paradox diet and then the carnivore, trying those different things to see which ones I liked and see I can mix and match stuff, and eventually figured it out. Lost 90 pounds total over that time frame. Just doing that. And then, now I understand diet and nutrition much better.
Right. And in your bios, it also says Spartan athlete. So for those of us who aren't familiar, what is a Spartan athlete? And at what point in your weight loss journey or afterward did you step up to that level?
Yeah, so my entire 90 pounds, I wasn't even being, I couldn't do anything. There's no physical activity there. I didn't ever starve myself. It was strictly just diet and nutrition. Or diet meaning what you consume, not a diet in terms of how people think of it now. It's just like your actual eating habits. So that's how I know that's not connected. The Spartan stuff came about when I was doing my coaching programs. There was the heroic coaching program for the mental performance stuff required a Spartan race to kind of get qualified. And at the time, I was just still in such distress for my body, kind of getting over that, so that I couldn't complete it. So I just started working towards being able to do that. And what a Spartan is, for those that don't know, is it's an obstacle course race, and they have different lengths. It started with a 5K. They also have a 10K, 21K, and then a 50K. And then they have some like trail stuff too. But it's just like 5K race, either through some kind of wooded area or mountain or something, and just a ton of different little obstacles, and like monkey bars and rope climbs and barbed wire crawls and things like that. So just all kinds of like mixed bag of things to like throw in your way. And so anyway, before this coaching program, it was one of the requirements was to do that, and I really wanted to complete it, but the first one I couldn't do. So then I just kept working towards it because I wanted to do one, and it also gave me kind of a target to rebuild towards and something to kind of aim at. So that was just kind of how it started.
Right. And now, other than the one to qualify, are you doing them frequently now or every now and then? Or is this something you did and now you kind of just embody the principles from it into your current fitness routine?
No, I did the first one September of 23, and then I just like I kind of got hooked. I was like, I want to do more. So then they have this called what's called a trifecta. So you can do all three of them in a year, or if you do all three of them in a weekend, it's called a weekend trifecta. Three of them being the 5K, 10K, and either the 21K or 50K.
Wow.
You can do the one to do it. So I ended up doing, I think, 12 races in 24, and I've done 12 already this year, and I got three more coming up in October on the same weekend. I'm gonna do the weekend trifecta in Dallas. So I've done several of the weekend trifectas and everything. So I usually do two in the weekend when they have them. When I go, I usually do both races if they have it, or all three if they have them. So
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. I've been looking at, unfortunately, it just was kind of last minute. Like I've been getting ads for a thing called Savage Race Georgia. And it's kind of like one of
oh,
those
yeah,
things where it's got different obstacles. For those who aren't familiar with it, there's rope climbs, there's monkey bars, there's you take rings and climb across hooks, there's different
yeah,
exercises with heavy tires and all kinds of stuff. And the ad I got was only 4 days away from the event. I was like, man, this is something different. I've done plenty of 5Ks, I've done longer runs up to 10 miles, and I've done, mock special forces missions and stuff like that. But this was something that, for me personally, I know that I haven't done a lot of grip strength training, which I knew was going to be a lot of, at least I went on the website and I previewed the obstacles, and like 95% of them were hanging or climbing. And that
yeah.
was just something that, it doesn't, like, you could be a strong guy, but working that grip strength and developing those muscles is its own category as well. And so, next time I will be getting to that, but I've started some training now, doing more pull-ups, doing monkey bar work, doing different forearm workouts and stuff like that. So I'm excited, and I've got the, like you kind of described it, that when the bug bites it, once you do one, it's like I want to do more of these. That's how I felt with 5Ks and with recently doing the Hero Games charity, which simulates special forces training and missions, like doing that stuff, getting out there, crawling in the mud and rucking. It's like I want to do more stuff like this. It's more intense than just running. I love running, can do that on my own, but these competitions, like these Spartan races, like these Savage races, that kind of stuff, it definitely is something a lot more involved. And I encourage everyone listening, if it's something you want to look into, post American Ninja Warrior, there are a lot of outdoor and indoor courses that you can actually train on that have different things set up for you to try if your gym doesn't have a lot of stuff. I know I'm sure there's even apps downloaded where you can track them, but I just usually look online near me, in my area, and you can find outdoor courses that have different balance beams, that have different, bars and everything set up for you to try these like mini obstacles. And is that something you train on, Mr. Brewer? Do you train? How do you train and get ready for these?
So I actually do a workout group based out of Alaska. So I do it all online with them. So they do a lot of stuff that's like hanging and calisthenics based. So I kind of get a lot of the strength based stuff from that anyway. But then I just got a bunch of sandbags and just do a bunch of sandbag work, a lot of pull ups, a lot of push ups, things like that. Because like I said, grip strength is really like a big thing. So just being able to like hang on a bar for a while, whether or not you're pulling or not, just being able to hang there for, just that. And there's a bucket carry, but again, even the bucket carry, like you got to put it on your shoulder for the most part, and then I kind of hold on to it. So that again, grip strength. The sandbag carry, you got to be able to hold it, or hold it on your shoulder. So if you can't hold on to things for a while, you're going to struggle doing it a little bit. But it's all something you can work towards. You can take your breaks. You can just get out there. Like they don't really care. You can at least with the Spartans, if you're not doing the competitive side, just doing like the open series, they don't really care if you do the obstacles. They have like penalty loops you can do things like that. If you
Mm,
choose not to do them, whatever, it's fine. They just want you to get out and try something. So that's really the big thing there. And I think Savage Race is very similar to like you could technically skip any of the obstacles if you want, but you can't like qualify for the like medals and things like the elite medals or whatever it is. So
yeah. Yeah, I know after the mock special forces mission that I did, one of the workouts that I'm definitely trying to do more now is the farmer's walk, because there was a lot of times where we had to carry things or just pick things up like that and walk, whether it was weighted ammo boxes or gear. And so that's something
yeah,
I'm adding, whether it's on the treadmill or around the place. And I definitely am doing some hanging work and pull-up work with the weighted vest, right? So if I can do, 100 pull-ups with the weighted vest on, and I go to the race with no weighted vest, the idea is it'll be a lot easier. So doing stuff like that, that's why I've been doing a
yeah.
lot of weighted runs. And do you have a favorite workout that you love to do more than others? And do you have a least favorite workout?
No, I don't really program my workout too well. Like the group in Alaska does some programming for me. Well, they do programming for me. I follow that quite a bit, but then I just do random stuff in there. So for the running, I just do my own running stuff, and then I do a lot of random sandbag work. Like one I'll do was it sucks but works really well is I have a 100-pound sandbag, and I'll just like carry it for 30 minutes. I'll put the clock on, and I just have to keep my butt off the ground, keep my knees off the ground, keep the sandbag off the ground. That's the only thing. It's like I can rest in a low squat. I can rest like holding it, hanging over. I can put it on my shoulder. I can carry it in front of me, do whatever. I just can't drop the bag for 30 minutes, and that's a bitch. But man, it it works really well. You're tired as hell afterwards. But yeah, just I really just kind of randomly do things. I'll just do some sandbag rows or whatever. There's a Have you ever seen that workout for the movie 300?
No, so everyone keeps telling me to watch that movie, especially as I get more into this stuff. So that's on my
Yeah,
list of things to do.
so it's basically kind of a old school CrossFit workout. That one's pretty fun. It's basically 300 reps over multiple exercises. So you start with 25 pull-ups, and then you do 50 deadlifts. They say 135 pounds. I don't have 100. I have a 150-pound sandbag, so I just do it with that. And then anyway, I won't go through the whole thing. There's like 7 things, whatever. So it's 300 reps total, and then you front load 25 pull-ups, and then end load with the 25 pull-ups. And you do 50 reps of each thing in between. But so I do like doing that one. That was pretty fun actually. It tears you up pretty good. Yeah, so that's really I do like I said, I do a lot of bar stuff, a lot of hanging stuff, just because it's fun.
Right. And you mentioned coaching. So Who should check you out as a coach and what kind of clientele do you work with?
I really focus on men, and then like I'm kind of dialing towards like weight loss, but ultimately anybody who's really trying to use their mindset and shifting their mind to be able to accomplish anything. That's really what I do as a mental performance. It just really applies to weight loss and everything. Most people's weight loss journeys and goals fail because they just can't stick to the program or they don't understand it and they don't have the ability to like overcome the obstacles and hurdles. But that really is the same thing for almost every single goal. So, you know, yeah, really anything related to that.
Yeah, and how long have you been doing that for again?
Probably 4 years now, but like kind of dedicating to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, like anything, it expands each year, it gets,
Yeah.
larger and more expansive and stuff like that. And so, what can people expect from you in the coaching journey? Is it weekly Zoom meetings? Is it bi-weekly? How do you have it set up? Is it individual to individual basis?
I have a couple of tiers. I can do some small group stuff. I'm thinking about adding that just to make it more affordable for people too, just because because people don't want to pay. Also, sometimes just in groups it helps better. Some people you can kind of feed off each other. But mostly right now, I've just been doing like one-on-one stuff with people, just working towards it, and really just kind of focus on like first recognition, right? So you have to be able to like see what you're doing first before you can make any changes. So the first thing is you really just start with just being able to just observe yourself and see what's going on. And then we start building a plan of how to overcome those things and then trying to figure out why they're coming up in the first place, if there's any kind of patterns and things like that. And we just keep just building skills. And the thing is, like, I don't really want you as a client for a life either. I want you to learn skills that you can take and actually utilize so that you don't have to have me all the time. Like, right? I think that's really the problem with a lot of modern day therapy is they don't teach you skills a lot of times. They want you as a client, so they
Mm,
make you feel good enough to keep coming back. Right? It's like that's not what I want. I want to help you, and that's it. Like give you some skills, make you learn some skills that you so you can actually handle life.
right. And then before we close off here, one of the things I want to mention again, as I mentioned in the beginning, rise again from the struggle. A podcast, not your typical podcast in the sense that these are 1 minute episodes, so real compact messages. What can people expect from that? What should they listen to it for?
Yeah, so a lot of it's centered around just like the mindset tricks and tips, and to be able to get started on just starting to understand this process and things to look at, things to start questioning, kind of related back to weight loss, things like that. But really, it's just learning the mental game, the mental process, and how to overcome your own thoughts and not let your mind or some other thing rule you. That's really what I try to portray, give people that value to understand how to like at least start the process and then you know ask questions from there if they need more help.
Yeah. So, as we wrap up this episode, what would be your one big takeaway for everyone? Your one, whether it's a piece of advice someone told you that's really helped you in life or something you discovered along the way.
If you still have breath in your lungs, you still got a chance, man. I was basically so to backtrack just a second. What I ended up having was cervical instability. So every time I look up or move my neck, really, I was crushing my brain stem and a lot of my spine. So that's why I had so many nervous system disorder and dysfunction going on. And right before COVID happened, I was basically dead on my couch. I was just laying there. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go from the couch to the fridge. So when I eventually figured out what it was, I found out myself. I got stem cell therapies, from a guy out in Colorado, doctor out of Colorado, and started to fix myself. So I had to go piece by piece, a little by little, starting out 200-meter walks, and then eventually I led adding in one push up a day, 10-second hanging, like 10 pulls on the rowing cable, and then just kept building from there. So, you don't have to start with some massive thing. You start with something laughably small and just keep building. So if you still have some breath in your lungs, you can start figuring out some of these things and start putting together just a string of good events and understand that it's just part of the process. Nothing can really stop you, if you just put that time and effort and energy into it.
For sure, I totally agree. Just, you want to call them baby steps, small steps, or just 1%, 2% better each day, starting somewhere. And I agree 100%. And I'll say, even just from my journey of weight gain, because I'm trying to gain weight and get stronger, where I was at in the beginning was, hey, maybe, and there's a lot of shame around this, unfortunately, there's a lot of stigma around this, but
Yeah,
maybe you're bench pressing and you can only do the bar, but eventually you're going to add plates to it. Then you're going to add more plates and more plates. And as much as I hate how light, my lifting was when I first started, it's almost I'm almost grateful for it in the sense that I look back and I've come even further than most people can see when they look back, So when you're starting with even smaller steps, not only are you getting work done every day, but that progression is so much more scalable to look at. And it really is something amazing to look back and say, hey, like now, even on my worst lifting days, I'm still lifting twice as much as my strongest days back then. So
yeah,
I totally agree. Each day, whether you start with 10 push-ups a day and slowly work your way to 100 a day, but a lot of these people we see them at the end result or at a peak of their journey. And we say, well, yeah, that guy, look at that guy. Of course he can do 1,000 pull-ups. He wasn't always able to do that. At some point, he had to start somewhere. So I think it's reminding ourselves to remember that there's a process. We want
yeah,
to just jump to the highlights we see on social media and the guys who are already there and the gals who are already there. We have to remember it's a process to get there and we have to start somewhere. But so many people are afraid to start that they never do, right? But if you never do, you're never going to get there. You're never going to make any process. So I completely agree. Just do what you can.
yeah. I think there's a saying that says, don't compare your day one to somebody's day 500, right? And that's kind of what you're talking about there is you see these people online and you think, oh my God, I can never get there. It's like, well, they started from crap too. So, I mean, everybody starts at the bottom. You got to work your way up and you just got to put in the work. So, you know, it, I don't like the saying comparison to Diva Joy because I actually think that's incorrect. We all compare something at some point. You have to. There's no other metric you can do. Like even if it's to yourself yesterday, right? Like you have to have something to kind of like contrast against. It's wrong comparison that becomes the problem. Because again,
Mm,
if you're comparing the wrong things side by side, then you never, like I said, apples and oranges kind of thing. It's like, well, of course they're not going to look the same. They're not going to act the same. They're not going to taste the same. But what you can do is start from the seeds and go, even if it's apple seed, orange seed, you can say, how long did it take to get to there, right? Like, they both have similar paths. So you can do something like that. It's like, hey, it may have a similar path, but we're going to try to be something different. How can I get there faster by learning from their mistakes at this level that they were at when where I am, right? Like, no matter how the time frame is. And then you can quicken your time frame because you're learning from their level that, equivalent.
right. I 100% agree. So, Mr. Brewer, one, thank you for your service to this country. And two, thank you for coming on the show today and sharing your insights. And again, we're going to have your link tree in description below and your other information so people can contact you or check out your work further. But again, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Sailing through the ocean blue, nuclear reactors, my crew, guiding the ship, the stars as our guide, through the waves we ride. Jokes and laughter fill the air. On this voyage we have to share, working together, side by side, as one family we will abide. In the heart of the ship we reside, nuclear operators with pride, powering the vessel with every stride. Our mission, a source of great pride.